Welcome back to the Mindful Hunter podcast. I'm your host, as always, Jay Nichol. And this week, we're going to dive into a full-blown Q&A episode. This is my largest Q&A episode by a long shot. I don't know if it's just the channel is growing or maybe there's hunting seasons kind of opening up just around the corner so people have more questions. But I got absolutely inundated with questions this week. So thank you very much for all the feedback. Now, before we dive into this, I kind of want to address the elephant in the room. I made a post yesterday about Meat Eater that kind of went on to explode on my Instagram. And let me read it to you here. Meat Eater employees, please stop whoring yourselves out every time one of your many companies releases a new product. For the record, when the same company that owns the product you're reviewing cuts your paycheck, it's not a review, it's a commercial. Have some dignity. Now, 99% of the feedback I got on that was positive. To give you an idea of how many people feel similarly to me, that is one of my most viewed stories of all time, and that story got more likes than any other story I have ever posted in the history of my Instagram account. So I am not alone in being fed up with these like marketing barrages from these companies that employ, dozens of influencers. But let me be very clear. I like Meat Eater itself. I still listen to the podcast regularly. I like what Ranella stands for. I don't want to come off as like a Meat Eater hater. Here's what I do hate. When people try and pawn off an advertisement as personal opinion, and then they replicate that across their entire brand, and they think none of us are going to notice. Like when that new FHF bino harness came out, and all of a sudden every single Meat Eater employee under the sun is telling us it's their favorite bino harness. Now here's the thing. I haven't seen any of you use any other bino harness. So how would you know it's your favorite bino harness? Until you use several different products and you have like a way to compare and relate them, your opinion's, kind of moot. Now, again, I just want to be hyper clear on this. If you go and look at their actual posts, it has this very authentic vibe. Like Clay posted one about this jacket the other day, like, oh, hey, just wanted to pop you, let you know I've been using this jacket. I really love it. It's fantastic. What he doesn't tell you is that the same company, the Chernin Group, that owns Meat Eater, owns First Light, owns FHF, owns Phelps Gear, and that he is, if not directly, at the very least indirectly, financially incentivized by the well-being of these products and how well they do on the market. So don't come on here and pawn it off like you just decided randomly it would be a good idea to tell people about this new product that you stumbled across and you really enjoy. It's like you got an email from whoever's in PR telling you that, oh, this product hits the market on this date. You need to go on your social media account on this date and post a review. And that bothers me, not for the 90% of you that understand what goes on behind the scenes, but for the 10% of the hunters that are new that think this is Clay's honest opinion based on looking at several different products, because that's what it seems like when you listen to him. And this is the last point I'm going to make on this particular topic. Lying is lying, okay? So when Steve Ranella told me to go buy Vortex Razor binoculars because they were the best binoculars money could buy, and then I went and bought them, and I was new to hunting, fair enough, gullible, naive, believe the hype, but the words that came out of his mouth were, these are the best binoculars you can buy. I bought them and later found out they were shit. A lie is still a lie. So he is being paid by Vortex to lie to people. And so I think this has gone on so long in so many different industries. Like I had a couple messages from people yesterday like, oh, we know they're all full of shit, but who cares? It's just how the industry operates. I care. That's not okay. And until enough people stand up and say, piss off, man, Stop lying to us. Stop feeding us shit products that because we trust you as an individual, we're now going to go buy. And so that's kind of what's underneath all of that for me, is this people pretending that a personal opinion, or pretending that an advertisement is personal opinion, and then outright lying to people about the quality of products in order to create more sales for a brand that is sponsoring you. I don't care how many people I piss off. I don't care how many brands get angry at me. I'm not going to stop talking about it. And when I see outrageous examples like I do with Meat Eater, I'm going to continually call them out, because enough is enough. People should make products that stand on their own merits. You shouldn't need to hire influencers to peddle your products. If the product that you make, like, have you ever seen a Swaro discount code? Have you ever seen anybody with an affiliate code for Swarovski binoculars? Never. You know why? Because you don't need it, because they're the best. So when you have a product that is sincerely good and authentically solves a problem that people have, that product will sell. It's these subpar products that need all this overblown marketing hype in order to survive that I have an issue with. So I'm not going anywhere. The channel and all this stuff is finally big enough that, you know, people actually hear me when I speak, and I believe it's part of my job to kind of call this shit out when I see it. So hopefully you guys don't have, I'm also not trying to annoy you. I will not keep the feed just a barrage of negativity. I promise you that. But when there are outright examples like that, I got to call that shit out. Okay. First round of questions we're going to get into is from Mindful Reviews, because if you're a Mindful Reviews member, you get priority access to the Q&A episodes. For anybody that doesn't know what Mindful Reviews is, go to mindful-reviews.com. It's my community review platform that I've built. It's a membership community. Go check it out. You got any questions? Let me know. So Caleb says, love the podcast with Pat. Will there be any rifle reviews in the near future? And if so, what rifles are in consideration? I don't have any specific rifle reviews being planned. Rifles are super expensive. My first love is archery, not rifle hunting. So I'm not the type of guy that wants to own a ton of guns. That being said, I understand it's very popular with the listeners because most of you are rifle hunters. So I will do what I can to get some more rifle content on the channel. I am planning my own custom build right now. As soon as bear season's over, I'm probably going to put my Fierce 300 PRC up for sale, and I'm going to use those funds to buy a custom folding stock, most likely 7 PRC. And that entire build will be detailed on the channel, and I'll review that gun when it's done. So no, I don't have any specific rifle reviews slotted in the near future. But if there's a particular rifle you want me to look at, let me know and I'll reach out to some people and I'll see what I can do. Lander says, have you done an arrow review? I have not. I particularly shoot Black Eagle. I've shot a couple different arrows, but that is certainly something that I could work on over the summer. Ivan says, for an August BC sheep hunt, is it worth running a synthetic sleeping bag / quilt for its increased ability to dry you out at night at the cost of greater weight and volume compared to down? This is a fantastic question. And I will say that of the 6 hunts I have on the books this year, the one hunt I am planning on using a down sleeping bag is my sheep hunt. And let me tell you why. It's the one hunt where I'm going to have to pack for the most amount of days on my back. And so weight and space is at a premium. It's also the hunt that is at the time of year where I'm least likely to get rained on. And even if I do get rained on, it's the least likely to be so cold that it would create like a mission critical catastrophic situation. Now, all that being said, lots of people have been snowed on in August while hunting sheep in British Columbia. So it is one of those things that could come back to bite you in the ass. Now, that being said, I also run primarily synthetic puffy layers these days. So worst comes to worst, I can always wear my puffy layers to bed inside of my down sleeping bag. And I have used my down sleeping bag to dry out when I was moderately wet before, and it works okay. It's not great like synthetic, but you will wake up, 80, 85% dry. So yeah, I think for the vast majority of situations, that kind of midsummer sheep hunt, a down bag would be perfectly acceptable. And my down bag is way lighter and smaller than my synthetic bag. And I actually use a quilt. I use an Enlightened Equipment Enigma quilt, and I have the identical synthetic and down versions. They're both 20 degrees. They both have a 20D shell. They're both made out of the same material. And the down is way smaller and way lighter. So yes, I notice a significant difference when I pack the down as opposed to when I pack the synthetic. Dan says, I think you had mentioned it a little while ago, but what are you doing for spring black bear? So I'm currently 5 weeks out from my bodybuilding show, and that has to take priority. You all know this is the last year. I'm not messing around on this last one. I'm giving it my all. So I have to stay as focused as is humanly possible. So I'm not doing a whole lot for spring bear. Now, that being said, it does look like I might be able to sneak away for an overnight on the 13th and the 14th. A buddy of mine who's got some good bear spots reached out, asked if I wanted to go on a weekend trip. Wife gave me a pass. It is Mother's Day weekend, so I'm still a little bit on the fence, but 99% sure that's the game plan. We're going. My wife kind of expressed a little bit of hesitation, but to be honest with you, she's in Miami for a week right now. So she's normally pretty generous when she gets back from one of these work trips. So I'm sure 2 weeks from now, she's not going to care if I deke out for 2 days. So that's about it. And then when I get back from my trip, there's still a month of spring bear hunting. So at that point, I might see if I can get out again. But it's going to be more fun than anything. I'll probably take the rifle, even though I would prefer to hunt bear with the bow. I really just like a meat hunt, looking to put some bear meat in the freezer. I love eating bear meat. So yeah, no serious bear hunting plans. But I deeply love bear hunting, and that's one of the reasons that bodybuilding's got to go, because it kind of messes with my whole bear hunting season. So Tyler asks, curious what optics I am running for my hunts. So my entire optics setup is a pair of Swarovski NL Pure 12 by 42 binoculars and a Zeiss Harpia 95 millimeter spotting scope. And I'm in the process of switching out the Zeiss. It is a phenomenal piece of glass, but it's just time for a change. So I've got it up for sale. If you're interested in a mint condition Harpia, it got replaced under warranty about 7-8 months ago, and it's never been on a hunt since that warranty replacement. So it is essentially a brand new spotting scope. If you're interested in that, shoot me a DM. I'm still a little bit on the fence what I'm going to replace it with. I've been going back and forth between Swaro and Kawa. I think if you put a gun to my head right now, I'm going Swaro, only because of the interchangeability of the objective and the ocular lenses and the kind of options that adds that are impossible to get any other place. I've got a big desert mule deer hunt planned, and the idea of taking the BTX on that would be like pretty phenomenal. So, and I might be able to put my hands on one for a couple weeks. So that's the game plan there. And I think I would probably go 95. I know it's a little heavier. I know it's a little bigger, takes up a little bit more room, but I've talked to a couple guides, and the one guy just said flat out, I spotted more stuff with my 95 than my 85. He had both, greatly preferred the 95. He said the increased field of view was really worth it. And I think that's a personal choice for everybody. I'm a bigger guy. I tend to already pack a lot of gear. There's only 8 ounces difference between the 85 and the 95. So, yeah. So I think that's where I would go right now, would be the Swaro ATX 95. But again, I'm not really going to make any serious considerations until I sell my Zeiss. And until then, I'm more than happy with my Zeiss. The quality of that glass is phenomenal. There's a couple little ergonomic issues that bug me about it, but nothing that affects the actual performance of the scope. All right, that's all we got for mine for reviews. Let's jump on over into Instagram. All right. Are hunters too reliant on technology/equipment to make up for skills shortage? I'm going to be somewhat controversial here and say that's a hard yes. And I am going to call myself out in order to prove this point. So anybody who's watched last year's sheep hunting film knows that I flew in, lost my phone on the first day in the lake, had to fly back out, get a new phone, and fly back in. Now, that is not because I don't know how to use a compass. That is not because I don't know how to use a map. It is because I got so complacent with my phone that I didn't even bring a paper map. And so I'm not even going to go so far as to say that it's like a skills shortage, but it's like a blind spot because I went on so many hunts in a row where I didn't have any technology problems. I stopped planning for the worst case scenario. And I will never go on another backcountry hunt without a map and a compass. Now, phones are far more quick. They're far more detailed. They let you do far more things than a paper map. I am not going to hamstring myself just because and use a paper map in order to like stand on some soapbox and say I have better orienteering skills than you do. However, I think having the tools as a backup and having the skills to use those tools if your technology does go down is non-negotiable. And I think, to be honest with you, if the majority of guys out there today were deep in the backcountry and their phones died, they'd be hooped because they don't know how to read maps, they don't know how to use compasses, and they don't know how to triangulate to get themselves in and out of places without the use of their phone or a GPS. And I think that's really important. And I think it's something that more people need to start spending some time on. And that was one of the reasons I was so transparent with what happened to me on that sheep hunt, is that I wanted it to be a lesson that we all had the opportunity to learn from. It was an expensive lesson in a variety of definitions of the word. And the more people that can benefit, then the more worthwhile that lesson was. So yeah, I agree with you, man. I think people have become too complacent because of technology and we stopped planning for worst case scenarios. Favorite person in the hunting industry? Holy bejesus. I don't even really know where to start answering that question. You know, I'm probably going to have to say John Barklow. John is one of the most selfless people I've met in the hunting industry. He was giving me his attention and his resources long before anybody else ever gave a shit. And I had nothing to give him in return. Dude, I had no audience. There was no reason for him to help me out the way he was helping me out. Even when it was just sharing his wisdom, being willing to hop on the phone with me or whatever. Like, he didn't care. He didn't, a lot of these people, they do it because of what they're going to get back. And I'm not even going to call them out for that. I mean, that's the way most of life works. But John is this guy who has this insane skill set, this insane background. And for some reason, he has the humility and the generosity to want to share that with people without any direct need for compensation or reciprocity. And you can see that from the content that he posts on his channels, from the newsletter that he puts out. I mean, yeah. So maybe if I thought about it long and hard, there'd be some other people that I would put on that list. But off the top of my head, if I was going to pick one person, my favorite person in the hunting industry, I'm going to go John Barklow. Okay, somebody is looking for their first tent or teepee. Well, my friend, I hate to say this, but that is a terrible question. I don't know what type of hunting you do. I don't know how many people are going to be using it. I don't know what weather conditions you're in. I don't know what your physical fitness is like and your capacity for carrying gear. I don't know what the topography you're going into is like. I mean, I know absolutely nothing. So what value could I add? I think, much like with all pieces of gear, when people are considering a tent or a teepee, they're trying to find one piece of gear that will do everything for them. And I think when we try to find something that does everything, we wind up with something that does nothing very well. You'll survive in it across all 4 seasons and all of your different hunts you may have planned, but it's not going to be the best piece of gear for any one of your hunts. So I would ask yourself, what situation is the most common situation I'm going to run into? Like, do you hunt most often in the fall? Do you hunt most often in dry circumstances, wet circumstances? If you've got 3 or 4 hunts, what are 2 or 3 of those hunts that have something in common? And then try and get a piece of gear that is going to fulfill the needs particularly well for those hunts. Because when people try and get that one piece of gear that's going to do everything, it never works out well. That piece of gear does not exist. Now, the one note of caution I have about teepees and floorless shelters in general is that if you're going to be in a particularly buggy climate, you need some type of like netting or mesh on the inside. And there's different potential solutions for this, but that would be, I don't worry about water. You can use teepees in like really rainy conditions. You just got to be careful where you set them up. I've used tons of floorless shelters with really, really good results. I've used tons of tents with really, really good results. So if you want to pass me some more information, I'm happy to provide some more specific recommendations, but just be honest with yourself and try and get a piece of gear that's going to be as useful or as specifically appropriate to as many of your hunts as possible without trying to get a one and done solution, because they don't exist. Oh, my brother asks, when are you buying an ATV? Well, we have some bad news about the ATV. My wife and myself and my family have been invited to a wedding in Europe in July. And so we are taking my kid and we're going to Europe for 2 weeks. The wedding is in Bordeaux, so we're going to go stay at a chateau for 4 days, and then we're going to rent a car, and we're going to take 4 days and drive over to Italy, and then we're staying in Rome for the remainder of the 2 weeks. And we're going big. We're going to have fun, but there's a pretty hefty price tag on that trip, and basically the kind of fun funds or the disposable income from the year has been somewhat spoken for by that trip. So it's always possible that, maybe crypto shoots through the moon again here and there'll be a little bit of extra fun money kicking around. But if that doesn't happen, it looks like I'm going to have to put off the ATV purchase until next year because, family comes first. And my wife doesn't ask for a whole lot. And it was really important. This is one of her best friends who's lived over in Europe for, the last 10 or 15 years. And it was really important to her that we go. And my kid's finally old enough that I think she'll be able to appreciate a trip to Europe. And so I didn't even hesitate, and it doesn't even piss me off. I'm kind of kidding when I tell you I'm upset. I'm grateful at the opportunity that, we live a life where when I have an opportunity to go to Europe for 2 weeks, we can take our family and have a really good time doing it. And if it means no ATV, then so be it. How do you mentally prepare for the Canadian Rockies, and what has it taught you? I don't know that the Rockies is any tougher than anywhere else. I think the backcountry is a hard place to be. And I think I don't know as if you can mentally prepare for the backcountry. I think you can train physically. I think you can put yourself through long periods of discomfort in order to create a stronger mind in general. But especially if you're going to throw the solo component in the mix, there is very little that you can do to prepare yourself for that. You just got to do it, right? And so what do I recommend, or what has it taught me? I would start with short trips for most people. Do an overnight, do 2 nights, do 3 nights, take somebody with you at first, work towards doing a solo overnight. Probably the most important lesson is that you will fail at the beginning in some way, shape, or form. You're going to take the wrong gear. You're going to break mentally. You're going to come out early. You're going to run out of food. You're going to lose a phone. I mean, things are just, it's way too complex for things to not go wrong. And I think the best thing that you can do is when you get home, be honest with yourself, ruthlessly honest about what went wrong and what your role was in what went wrong, so that you can learn from it, and so it doesn't happen again. You know, it was funny. I used to work at this fireplace installation company in Winnipeg, and we would install like gas fireplaces in new homes and old homes too, but mostly new homes. And they also had like really expensive sofas and stuff, so we would do furniture deliveries. And I can remember I went to one new home and I left my boots on, and I walked across a brand new hardwood floor. And then we used to have to do these things called finishings, where we would install the gas fireplace mid-construction because it'd be roughed in and they needed it to be there to like build the mantles and everything else. So we would install the fireplaces mid-construction because they would have it roughed in and they would need the fireplace in there in order to like build the mantle and all the rest of it around it. But during the rest of construction, there would all be these like minor things would happen to the fireplace, and you'd have to go in and do little touch-ups and kind of spray a little black spray paint on it and clean the glass and, you know, put the brass on and just make it look pretty. And so I walked across this hardwood floor in my dirty work boots, and then when I went to take the cap off of the spray bottle, the little nib broke off, and this spray bottle just started shooting spray paint into the air. And I didn't notice it at the time, but slowly that spray paint like settled down on the hardwood floor. So when I left, the next guy, the contractor who came in, basically sees these like muddy boot prints going across a hardwood floor, and then this area with all these like black paint flecks on this new floor. And so obviously he calls my boss, and my boss is kind of pissed. But I got to give him some credit. He calls me into the office and he goes, "Do you know what happened at that last house you went at?" I'm like, "No, seemed pretty normal." And he proceeds to tell me the story. And I'm like, you know, I'm not an asshole. I'm like, Jesus, I'm sorry, man. Like, that's clearly shoddy. That's, you know, my fault. He goes, "Listen, man, you just made 2 mistakes. You got 98 left. Just don't repeat any of them." And that always stuck with me. Like, it's okay to make a mistake. It's not okay to keep making the same mistake over and over and over again. And that's the lesson that I take into the backcountry with me. It's okay if I'm not perfect. It's okay if I forget something. It's okay if something goes wrong. What's not okay is if that happens again on the next trip, right? Like, if I notice weaknesses in my mind or weaknesses in my body, or I've forgotten things, like I make note of this, I pay attention to it, and it goes in this little mental checklist of things I need to work on so that it doesn't happen again. So I think that would be my biggest piece of advice. One of the things people tend to do is run away from failure. They think if they acknowledge it, it becomes real. And if they just ignore it, then they won't have really failed. I feel the polar opposite. I think you need to sit in that failure. I think you need to like simmer in it. I think you need to feel it, to breathe it, to be it, so that it soaks and seeps into your pores, and then learn everything, squeeze it for all it's worth. Then that failure won't happen again. Then you've won, whereas if you run away from it and then it just happens again 6 months later, I mean, I don't have a whole lot of tolerance for that in my own life, and I don't think you should either. Plans for your New Mexico draw. So I have literally spent very little time thinking about this. I have so many other hunts on the books before this one that it's pretty low down the priority. Also, I've been coos hunting a handful of times in the Southwest, and I've done an elk hunt in New Mexico, not that far from where I'm going. So I feel pretty comfortable, but the overall general game plan is going to be essentially a broken up backpack hunt. I'm not going to go in anything crazy for like 10, 12 days. The season's 15 days long. I'll probably go in for little 3-4 day jaunts. And if I find what I'm looking for, I can come back out and get more food and water and go back in. And if I don't find what I'm looking for, I'll go to new areas. I'm going to do a lot of extensive pre-scouting. I'm hoping maybe somebody could go lay some eyes on some ground before I get down there and help me out, let me know the kind of road situations and all the rest. But I'm basically preparing myself for a 2-week desert hunt solo. That's the game plan currently. And I'm pretty excited about that. But as it gets closer, I will 100% be focusing on that hunt and do a lot more content. And the whole hunt will be filmed, and I'm really looking forward to that because filming in British Columbia presents very unique challenges. Sometimes the weather's garbage. There's things that happen that really make it difficult to tell the story. Filming in the Southwest is a different story. It's much more forgiving. The scenery is really intense and dramatic. And I think it's a really fun place to film hunts. All right, backpack hunting coos deer in Arizona. Swarovski 15s SLC or 12 NL Pures. This is a great question. And you're not going to go wrong with either of these. I am going to say this might be the one and only hunt where I would pick those 15s over the 12s. I have hunted coos with both those, and my guide buddy in Arizona calls the Swaro 15s the coos killers. That's the only binoculars he owns, and he guides coos. I won't say he guides coos deer full-time because obviously he's guiding other things, but he's a full-time guide in Arizona, and he focuses almost exclusively on coos deer. He is a coos deer genius, and he loves the Swaro 15s. And for me, in that topography, because the thing is, it's not like you're ever very far away. Like you're not glassing things 3 miles away when you're in Arizona. You're glassing things like 800 to 1,200 meters, 3/4 of a mile to a mile away. And so having that huge field of view is really beneficial. And just the color and the contrast and the type of things that you're looking at, I think the 15s are particularly well suited for a coos deer hunt. So I think if you said, my only reservation is you specifically said a backpack hunt, and the 12s are going to be significantly lighter with a smaller footprint. So if you're concerned about space or weight, go with the 12s. You're not going to regret it. But if you're only going in for 3 or 4 days at a time and you got a nice light pack, take those 15s. You will love them. Hot tent opinions. I love hot tents. So I have owned 2 so far. I have had a Kafaru Megatarp with an 18-inch Smith cylinder stove, and I have a Seek Outside 12-man teepee with an XL box stove, and use them both, like them both. I think for certain hunting applications, hot tents are a game changer. Being able to like dry clothes out at night, being able to wake up in the morning and throw a little bit of wood on the fire and warm up your teepee. I mean, it is awesome. That being said, for me, they're more for like bigger base camp style hunts. A lot of people want to know why on my goat hunts I don't take a stove and stuff. I still find for most backpack circumstances, I would rather the simplicity of just a regular tent and a really high quality synthetic bag or quilt that I can dry out in every night. You know, everything has a caloric expenditure to it or a caloric cost. And when I get to the end of the day and I'm dead tired, I don't want to go looking for wood to put in the stove, to heat up the teepee, to dry out my stuff. I just want to crawl in my bag, soaking wet, pull the thing over my head, go to sleep, and wake up and I'm dry. It doesn't take as much energy. It doesn't take as much time. I know it's not as comfortable. Some people feel there's a psychological benefit to the fire. It's not for me. I thought I would use that Mega Tarp and Smith cylinder stove way more often for more aggressive backpack style hunts. And I took it on a couple, and I did use it on a couple. But after going back and forth between that and a more traditional system, I realized the traditional system for me was better. Now, if there's multiple people, if it's a bigger tent, if it's a fly-in, if it's more of a base camp style thing, if it's a truck hunt, I think the hot tent is a really, really great idea. And it's super mobile, super light, doesn't take much time at all to set up. So I don't think it's a solution for every single problem you're going to have, but for some situations, it's fantastic. I love them. How's the bodybuilding prep going? How do you plan to adjust your training post-show? This prep has been significantly easier than last year, and I think there's two main reasons. One, I'm psychologically prepared. I know what to expect, and that is invaluable. I think that's why so many people go back and hunt the same place, because there's this psychological comfort to it. And I think we are more likely to be successful when we're in that state of mind. Number two, I think I am physiologically prepared for it. I think, and I've heard this from many competitors, the first time that you try and cut, because your body doesn't know what's going on, you're only ever going to get so ripped. Like your body just hits this certain point where it's like, this is as far as you're going. And I can already see by the progress that I've made this year and by how my body is responding, I am going to be significantly leaner than I was last year. And the way things are going, I should be moderately bigger as well. That being said, you know, I hit a sticking point this week and my weight kind of hasn't even moved for a week. And I'm literally eating 75 grams of carbs a day. I'm on about 1,800 calories per day, which for a 6'1", 230-pound man is not a lot. And it takes a toll on your kind of emotional well-being, your mental well-being, the whole 9 yards. And to wake up every morning and see the scale stay the same. Now, the saving grace is I can see my conditioning getting sharper daily. So you need to kind of reframe it and go, this is a positive thing. This means I'm burning fat and I'm not burning muscle tissue. And you know, while cognitively I can accept that, accepting it emotionally is a completely different matter. And there's still days that I find very challenging mentally and emotionally. Now, I'm 5 weeks and 4 days out as of today, and I really feel like this is the fun part. I feel like most of the hard work is done, and I'm really looking forward. You know, you start changing on a daily basis the last few weeks, and it gets a lot easier to stay motivated. Those first few weeks can be really tough because you go from being this like really big, strong guy to like not so big and not so strong, but not really ripped yet either. So it's hard to stay motivated. but I am very excited that I'm going to bring a significantly better package this year. And it's my last one, so I'm giving it everything that I have. Now, how is my training going to change afterwards? I've thought about this a significant amount. So I have 2 months after my competition before my sheep hunt. So for those 2 months, the priority will be backpack cardio. I will try to get out at least 3 times per week for 90 minutes with a 50-pound pack and do my loop up the back of Burnaby Mountain, which I think I don't even remember now because I haven't been out and doing it this year. I think it might be 3.5, 4 miles with like 1,500 feet elevation gain. It takes me 90 minutes. You tend to burn about 1,000 calories. It's a grinder. And if I can do that 3 times a week, by the end of a couple months, I'll be in beast mode. I'll be able to charge up anything. Now, on the macro, I am going back to competing in jiu-jitsu. I love jiu-jitsu. I've been dying to get my daughter training jiu-jitsu. I haven't been able to do that because of bodybuilding and everything else. My daughter's finally agreed to do it. She's very excited. So I've already found the club I'm going to. I couldn't be more excited. So as soon as the bodybuilding competition is over, I'm going to go to the club, sign my kid up for kids jiu-jitsu, sign myself up for adult. I'm a decent blue belt, start training again, and then hopefully in the next 6 to 12 months, start competing again. The reason I'm doing this is that bodybuilding competition brings that level of intensity and competition to my life that I need just in order to feel complete as a man. And I think if I don't replace that with something else, I'm going to talk myself into doing another show. And I don't want to do that for a variety of reasons I've already discussed. So I asked myself, what else could I pour myself into that would give me that competitive, environment that I'm looking for? And immediately jiu-jitsu rose to the surface. So the new training program will look something like resistance weights, 2 to 3 days a week, probably a push-pull legs split, and then backpack cardio 1 to 2 days a week, and then jiu-jitsu 3 days a week. And and I can kind of double up on some of those, still aiming to train 5 days a week with 2 days off. I know everybody's on this like whole no days off kick. I question how hard you're training. I'm just going to be honest with you. If you can legitimately train 7 days a week, I don't think you're training to your full potential, because I can tell you, and I feel like I'm a pretty hardcore dude, the intensity with which I train, I can't do that 7 days a week. It's physically, I nuke my CNS. Now, if you're just doing like running or sprints on the bike or, a non-contact sport, okay, fair enough. But I mean, if you're lifting weights, if you're trying to build muscle, if you're trying to increase cardiovascular capacity, if you're like honestly focused on some type of goal, I'm going to go ahead and question your dedication and your intensity if you're actually able to train at what you think is full capacity 7 consecutive days in a row. So my goal will still to be have 2 days a week off. Thoughts on light 1 to 2 person floorless shelters, Duomid, Sky Air, Awihi, the new one from Argali, etc. I think they're fantastic. I am getting the new 1P Awihi from Argali, and I'm going to be running it on sheep this year. I am going to be getting the liner because sheep hunting can be really buggy that time of year, especially until you get up on top. And even sometimes once you get up on top, it's still bad. And there's no way I'm going in without a mosquito net of some kind. So it won't be, I think it's still coming in at sub 2 pounds. It's insanely light shelter, but it won't be the crazy, crazy ultralight of just the floorless piece. I think they're great. I think that Duomid looks fantastic. I was talking with him and he totally agreed to send me one to try out, and I just haven't circled back with him. And I'm really hesitant to take gear that I don't have a plan for using. And especially with shelters, and some of my early reviews there will be no more shelter reviews that I don't thoroughly test in the backcountry, which means I'm pretty limited in how many shelters I can review per year. So I'm not going to reach back out to him until I know I have a good solid hunt that I can take it on and beat the shit out of it on. But I think they're fantastic options. There are some drawbacks. Like, I have long been known as a proponent for freestanding shelters. I think for stability and safety and security, you can't beat a freestanding shelter, because even if all your pegs get ripped out of the ground, if you're in that thing, it's not going to collapse if it's a really durable freestanding shelter. And that's not the case with a lot of these trekking pole based ultralight shelters. If your poles start ripping out of the ground, or if you're camping in an area where it's really difficult to put pegs in the ground, sorry, if your pegs start ripping out of the ground, you're going to lose the structural integrity of that shelter, and bad shit is going to start to happen. Now, I don't think that's a reason not to use them, but I think it's a benefit of freestanding shelters that this new generation of shelters can't offer. It's why I have traditionally preferred freestanding shelters over the more aggressive ultralight shelters. But I think it's important to try new stuff, and so I'm going to take one of these out this year, and I'm looking forward to the opportunity. Tripod recommendation. So I'm going to have to hit pause on this one. And it's probably one of the single most requested topics I get recently. And I'm hesitant to give anyone recommendations until I can thoroughly test stuff. Here's what I will say. For an ultralight tripod, I have had great luck with a slick 634. For a slightly heavier tripod that offers more vibration resistance and kind of a better user experience, the Outdoorsman system is phenomenal. All that being said, there's a half a dozen tripods that are apparently on their way right now, and I'm supposed to be testing all of them. So I hope sometime within the next 2 months, I can have some more concrete feedback. And yes, I will be testing the new Tracer tripods. So as soon as I have an opportunity to put some miles on those, I will let everybody know how they go. But until then, I've used Slick and Outdoorsman's in the past, and they have served me very well. Is it possible that there's better options on the market right now? 100%. Can I unequivocally say what they are? I cannot. Favorite backcountry meal, and when are you coming to Ontario to hunt? All right, one at a time. Peak Refuel, specifically biscuits and gravy. That has got to be one of the most delicious. Like, it is so delicious, I save it for particularly emotionally challenging times in the hunt. Because if I know I've got that for supper, I don't care how shitty the day is, I'm happy all day. I could eat that shit every single day. I think it might end up ripping your ass apart if you did that, but it is so delicious. Yeah, Peak Refuel, biscuits and gravy. I think they sell it as a breakfast meal, but I never eat it for breakfast. It's too heavy for me for breakfast. I always eat it for supper. I love that. And in general, I prefer Peak Refuel meals. Only two main reasons. The taste is fantastic, and the protein. Finding backcountry meals with really high sources of protein is very challenging, and Peak Refuel does a great job. They're widely available. They're never on back order. They're easy to get. And I tend to stick with the pasta ones. I tend to like the cream sauces. I like a lot of them, but like the broccoli and cheese is really good. The pasta primavera is really good. The chicken Alfredo is really good. I love them all, man. They're really great. So that's probably my favorite, company for backcountry meals for sure. What were those gators you were testing out? I've actually got a ton of questions about these gators recently. They were from a local BC guy who goes under the moniker Ape Equipment. You can find him on Instagram, and I believe he also has a Facebook page. I actually shot him a text a day or two ago because so many people had asked me about them, whether they were released yet or not. And I haven't heard back from him. So I don't know if he's actually in mass production yet. one of the issues is that I tried a variety of different configurations, and I'm not 100% sure which kind of system he ended up going with for the final model. So I don't want to give my like full blown stamp of approval just yet, because I actually haven't seen the finished products. And there was some things he was toying around with I really liked, and there was some things he was toying around with that I wasn't such a big fan of. So I think overall he's a great guy. He seems to be very conscientious. I have no doubt he's going to make a great product. Now, whether that product is ready for release yet, I don't know. But Ape Equipment, local BC guy, seemed like a really good dude. This has got to be in relation to my Meat Eater post yesterday. Thoughts on increasing corporate shilling of once relatable hunting personalities. I mean, again, I'm not going to beat a dead horse. It kind of is what it kind of is. We have the opportunity to vote with our dollars. And so I am going to give my money to companies that behave in a way that I believe is admirable and ethical. And I'm not going to give my money to companies that don't. And sometimes that means walking away from products that you really want. I'm going to be 100% honest. That FHF Bino harness came out and I was like, holy shit, that thing is cool. I think he's knocked it out of the park. It's one of the nicest Bino harnesses I've ever seen in my life. And then two things happened. One, by the time I added all the accessories I needed to add to the cart so that it would behave in a way that could replace my entire Alaska guide creation system, the price tag was over $400. And then within about 8 hours, I saw 15 people, forcing it down my throat on Instagram, and it just turned me off. I was like, ugh. There's other Bino harnesses. Like a Bino harness is not important enough to me that if they're engaging in that type of shit, you're just not going to get my money. So, and that's my choice. I will, I'm not going to name a bunch of names, but there are other companies that engage in really aggressive marketing practices that I don't support, and I won't buy their products. I don't care how good they end up being, because those companies don't behave in a way that I want to support with my money. And I think that's how we vote in North America. Companies are kind of the new government, and the companies come to power that get the most money. So where we choose to spend our money ends up being the companies that become the biggest. So I will continue to place my money in the hands of companies that behave in ways that resonate with my own set of morals and values. And I don't want to blow smoke up somebody's ass, but that's why I have no problem recommending XO backpacks. What a group of dudes, man. Not only, here's the thing, if the product wasn't good, I don't care how nice you are, I still can't recommend it. And that happens. Really nice people send me things and they're just not very good. And then I can't recommend them. But the holy grail for me is when not only do you have a really sound technical product, but your company has values and morals and ethics that align with my own. XO is a great example of this. I genuinely like those guys and I genuinely trust their product. So I have zero hesitation recommending them across the board. I think Rydell over at Asiac is another example. That Bino clamp review I did the other day, getting to know him a little bit better and the way he treats his, he contacted me directly because a bunch of you guys started ordering it and shipping was really expensive. And he hit me up and he goes, listen, man, this is kind of breaking my heart. I don't want to charge these guys this much shipping, but for anybody who set up an e-com store, you're just using a shipping service provider and you don't have a whole lot of options. They just charge what they charge. And, I wish it was a little bit better, but it isn't. So he sends me a message and he says, do you know any reputable distributors up there that I could work with? Because even if it means taking a hit on my end, if it meant cheaper shipping for the guys up in Canada, that would be fine with me, because it's more important to me that these guys are able to get these at a reasonable price than me squeezing every single dollar I can out of each unit. And like, when people behave like that and start to put the customer first, like, it's like a win-win situation for me, because I feel really good about the product. I feel really good about the guys behind the product. So it's easy for me to recommend across the board. And I think you do have to look at all sides of the business when you're choosing, things to recommend these days. So what I think about increased corporate shilling is that I will just be more selective about where I spend my dollars moving forward. Is the XO K4 worth upgrading if you have a K3 already? So I've answered this question a number of times, and I'm going to say exactly what I've already said. I think from a quantitative perspective, the K4 is 15 to 20% better than a K3, but I don't think it's life-changing, okay? I think if the K3 works very well for you, if it fits well, if it doesn't slide down your hips, if you like the bag structure in the frame, and you are like 90% happy with your K3, stick with it. The K4 is not going to blow your mind. However, if the K3 had some stuff you liked, but it fell apart in a couple places for you, or it fell down in a couple places for you and didn't quite meet your needs, the hip belt doesn't work well for some people. Some people find it slides down the hips. Some people, the frame doesn't fit just quite right. If you're one of those people, there's a very good chance you're going to notice a significant difference in the K4. So I would say if you are unhappy with your K3, it's definitely worth giving the K4 a try. If the K3 is performing particularly well for you, I don't think it's a necessary upgrade at this point. Rock it for a couple more years and then think about upgrading. Thinking about a new rangefinder, Leupold RX 2800i TBR with possible others. This is not an area that I have a lot of experience in. I've had a Leupold 1600 and a Leupold 1200, and they were both great. I have very simple needs from my rangefinders. They literally just range for me. I like the TBR series because they will do your drop calculations and your slope distance calculations for you. That is super beneficial, but it's not going to do the really complicated stuff. If you want to put in like load data and wind data and sync it to a Kestrel and all that other kind of stuff, that Leupold's not going to do that. And so I can tell you I have been very happy with my 1200 and my 1600 with the limited needs that I have from a rangefinder. Am I a member on Rockslide? I'm 100% a member of Rockslide. I think Rockslide is great. I was asked to stop posting material, basically anything personally related. So I can go on there and ask questions. Technically, I could go on there and engage in other people's posts, but I can't post links to my reviews. I can't post links to my videos. I can't post links to anything that would even be tangentially related to mindful reviews. And if I do that, I have to pay a sponsor's fee. And I can buy some ads, and then I could post through those ads. And that's not something I'm interested in doing. This is, I don't begrudge them. I had a conversation with Robbie about it. I think it's a little insincere. There's lots of guys that post, their line is that if you're using Rockslide to promote a business of any kind, that you can't post on there unless you sponsor. There are all kinds of guys on there posting videos to their YouTube channels, and they use those YouTube channels to get paid views and to enter into brand deals with sponsors and all the rest of it. and they generate, returns from those videos. That's a business, and they don't have any problems with those guys. The moment I started my reviews and mindful reviews, and that was like a competition kind of element, I've been posting my hunting films on there for 6 years. Like my very first, from 2017, the first hunting film I ever filmed was a jet boat elk hunt with my old man. I've been posting my hunting films on Rockslide for 6 years. No one ever said anything. As soon as I started doing reviews, within 6 months, I got kicked off. So it's a little, I take it with a grain of salt. If they were really as hardcore as they wanted, then anybody with a YouTube channel should not be allowed to post their own YouTube videos on Rockslide, because technically a YouTube channel is a business. It creates revenue. You're trying to grow it, and you have ideas and things you're going to do with it, the bigger it gets. So all of those guys should be banned from Rockslide, and they're not, just me. So, but it's also not something I lose a lot of sleep over. You know how many views I lost when I stopped posting to Rockslide? None. Because we're all in this same community. I mean, if you don't see my stuff on Instagram, you will see it on YouTube. If you don't see it on YouTube, you'll see it on Hunting BC. Or I'll put it out in a newsletter. You'll hear about it in the podcast. Like, if you're interested in my shit, you'll see my shit. So I don't lose a lot of sleep over it. It was, and I don't hold anything against them. I think Robbie's a great guy and a hell of a hunter, and I don't really know anybody else over there. But I don't have any issues with those guys. General woodsmanship. Not really a question. Spend more time in the woods, man. 15 years of tree planting and forestry engineering in British Columbia taught me more about being in the mountains than I'll ever learn hunting. Simply because, I used to spend 300 days a year in the field. Like, how are you ever going to do that hunting? I literally used to spend 300 days a year, 10 hours a day in the mountains of British Columbia. And there's just no way to compete with that recreationally. Like, it's just not going to happen. And so, yeah, find ways to spend more time in the woods, and you will get better woodsmanship. Have you tried BC turkey? Any thoughts or experiences on it? I have not, and I need to. And that's another reason why this has to be my last bodybuilding show, because there's a lot of very compelling options in the spring that I currently don't have the resources to pursue. So I use Google Earth with iHunter and other map apps for a lot of e-scouting. Do you? 100%, man. Google Earth is probably my primary tool for scouting, and I use that in collaboration with Onyx. I think there's other platforms that are just as good, if not better than Onyx, but I've been in Onyx for over 5 years now, and it has so many of my points in it. My whole database of everywhere I've hunted for the last 6 years is in Onyx. So the thought of trying to move that to another platform, and I know Onyx works and it never crashes and I never lose data and it's just safe and secure, and so I stick with it. But I'm not saying it's the only option. I don't use iHunter a whole lot, but a lot of places I hunt in BC, you're nowhere near private land or anything, so it's not really an issue. I've used it in Alberta before when I was hunting because we needed to see property lines, but I think Google Earth is the shit. Zach says, I want to know how you manage the family life with the hunting obsession. Somebody asked this on the last podcast, and the simple answer is not always perfectly, my friend, and sometimes I go a little bit overboard. And at the end of the day, self-awareness is key, and recognizing what's really important and where you really need to spend time. And the one thing I didn't touch on in the last podcast that I'll touch on this one, that most people probably aren't aware of, I don't really have a social life. I don't drink anymore, but I can't tell you the last time that I went out with quote unquote friends. I don't go to movies. I don't go out for dinner and drinks. I don't meet up with people for coffee. I don't. All my time is spent either with my family or working on Mindful Hunter, or I'm at the gym. all of my time is spent pursuing one of my goals. Now, I'm not going to say I never spend time with friends, but it's normally, I mix it in with other stuff. Like if I want to see a buddy, I'll ask him to go do a backpack cardio hike. Or if I want to spend a lot of time with somebody, I'll ask them to go on a hunt together. You know, me and my buddy Tristan are going to go bear hunting here. He's a good friend. I don't see him very often. We'll go spend 2 days together. We'll have a blast. I'm not saying social time isn't important, but I have a very hard time justifying spending time doing things. Now, the other thing that I need to throw in here is I'm a hardcore introvert, like a painful introvert. So when I have an hour or two and I want to recharge, I do that by myself in the basement, relaxing, probably watching a movie. If you're an extrovert, maybe you do that by going out for drinks with a couple friends. So I don't want to say, don't go spend time with friends. What I would say though, is investigate how much, look at the hours during the day. How many hours were spent pursuing your goals and how many hours weren't? And is that the ratio you're looking for? But never forget, man, family trumps everything. So much like the quad, Europe trip thing, sometimes shit just hits a wall and no matter what I got planned, it goes in the trash and I just focus on my family. My wife's in Miami for the week. I got my kids solo. I'm very limited in how much time I have during the day now to do stuff. And so be it, man. That's the way it is. Best sleeping bag and pad for September archery elk hunt. I am going to go a synthetic Enlightened Enigma quilt. I'm moving away from down almost exclusively. The couple ounces just isn't worth it to me anymore with how far synthetic materials have come and how close they are now in weight and stuff. So synthetic Enlightened Equipment Enigma quilt, get it to your temperature rating of choice. Remember, you still got your clothes and your puffy clothes to sleep in. So go on the lighter end of the spectrum and just sleep in your clothes. And then I was recommending to everybody the Big Agnes Q-Core SLX sleeping pad in the long, wide version. I hate mummy pads. And they've discontinued it. And until there's a replacement for that, I currently don't have a sleeping bag recommendation. If it's a winter sleeping pad, I recommend the Exped Ultra 7R. I used that on 2 backpack winter hunts this year, and it blew my expectations out of the water. I love that pad. Now, I have heard very good things about the Sea to Summit Etherlight XT, but I need to preface that with the caveat that I have never personally used it. So while I think you should look into that one, I can't personally recommend it. So I'm not a great help. Thoughts on using 3-season tents in 4-season conditions? And he later elaborated on this question and said, why go from the Solo to the NEAC? And so the NEAC is a 3-season shelter from Hilleberg, and the Solo is a 4-season shelter from Hilleberg. Sneak peek, next week, there will be a review comparing the Solo against another very popular 4-season tent, and there will be a raffle for 2 tents, so stay tuned. I think it is perfectly acceptable to use a hardcore 3-season tent in a 4-season application. The NEAC is an incredibly durable 3-season tent. If anyone else made the NEAC, it would be considered a 4-season tent. With the diameter of the poles, the thickness of the material, the quality of the construction, for all intents and purposes, that is a 4-season tent. The only thing that doesn't make it a 4-season tent is that there's some venting that comes up from the floor. And in the 4-season models, the outer vestibule and fabric goes all the way to the ground. So you don't get airflow coming up and in under that vestibule. And the front door in a NEAC is fully mesh. And in the Solo, it is full fabric. And that retains an unbelievable amount of heat. However, structurally, I have no concerns with the NEAC in a winter hunt. You're going to hold up. In fact, I was talking with Stephen Drake, who's going to be on the podcast in a few weeks, and I know he used a NEAC this winter on a hunt identical to one I had the Stone Glacier Soleus on. And he had no problems in that NEAC. Now, he was probably a little chillier than I was because of the aforementioned characteristics of the NEAC. But let's put it this way. If you only had enough money for one tent, and I would tell you to buy the NEAC, and if the odd winter hunt came up, just go use it. I think for a backpack hunter, the Solo is overkill and there's not enough room. It is significantly heavier than the NEAC. It's significantly smaller than the NEAC. And while it is moderately warmer, I don't think it really pays off for those other characteristics. Now, if you had enough money for both, that's what you should do because the Solo kicks ass in deep winter hunts. It's a phenomenal tent. But if you only had enough one, I would say full blown, you go ahead with the NEAC. Now, I don't want people thinking that any 3-season tent can be used for 4-season application. I have a Sea to Summit Tellus TR2. I would not use that in a 4-season. The entire inner dome is mesh. It would be a terrible 4-season tent. Now, they do make a plus version that has a fabric inner liner. That might be a little bit more appropriate, but the pole diameter is also not nearly as big in that Sea to Summit Tellus as it is in the Hilleberg NEAC. I think they're 9 mil DAC poles in the NEAC. So yeah, I'm not saying any 3-season tent. I'm saying Hilleberg 3-season tents can be used for 4-season applications. Am I going to hunt whitetail this year? Oh yeah, baby. Going to Saskatchewan in November. I think it's the 16th to the 23rd or something like that. I am going with an outfitter. I feel bad. The name escapes me at the moment. I also don't like to share outfitted hunts until they're over because if I go and it's a negative experience, I don't want to badmouth them. And if it's a positive experience, I want to be able to give the personal reference after I've gone on the hunt, not before. But I looked long and hard and, I wanted a later winter whitetail hunt, and this place looked like the one, so I'm super excited. Probably won't film that one, but I'm super excited. How should hunting companies do product marketing? I originally saw this one, and I thought long and hard about it because marketing is necessary. As most of you are well aware, I have a consulting company that's my primary day job. It's a behavioral insights consulting company. And a lot of work I do has to do with consumer psychology and brand strategy, product strategy, deployment, all that kind of stuff. And I was the lead behavioral strategist for a project I did for Lululemon in regards to the consumer psychology of interfacing with new products because they were launching shoes and they'd never launched shoes before. And they wanted to understand how people engaged with new products because it's marketing a new product is different than marketing something people already know. One is like, sharing information and building trust and answering questions. And the other one is more about like touch points and building awareness. And they're significantly different. I'm not going to go into all the results and all that kind of stuff, partly because they paid a lot of money for it and it's not my shit to give away. But I will tell you this. There are significantly better, more academically validated, and more successful ways. And I'll tell you, the number one strategy of all major athletic brands when launching new products is using what they call seeders. Now, seeders are non-sponsored third parties. So these would be like, let's say you're into running. There are YouTube channels like running influencers that have gigantic YouTube channels. And all they do is look at gear. But they're not sponsored by any particular company. And their job is to, in an unbiased fashion, look at gear. And they're honest about gear. So here's the thing. You run the risk when you give your equipment to someone like a seeder because they could rip it apart. If you didn't build something particularly impressive, they're going to put up a shitty review. But if you did build something really impressive, having people's first exposure being a highly technical review from a non-biased third party is one of the most convincing ways to share information with people. Because basically the biggest thing that you're combating with a new product is doubt. Because every time we see something new, we doubt it. So you have to get, and technical information is kind of the best weapon to use against doubt in that particular scenario. And so if you just look at other industries, there are better ways to do this. In a lot of ways, hunting is significantly behind a lot of these other, athletic industries, leisure wear industries, just a lot of other ways. And so there are way better ways to do what they're doing than what it is right now. The problem is what they're doing kind of works. You build up these personalities, you put them on TV, and then you make them run around with your products. And then for most people, they want to be like those people, so they buy the shit. But then that only works for so long. And so, again, I think audiences are becoming more aware, and we're losing patience with this particular marketing methodology. Anyways, I think it's a great question, and it's something that I would like to dig into deeper. What is your go-to knife or knives? I actually don't have one. I'm going to be honest. I used a Havalon Piranha for probably 5 years exclusively. I loved it. Then I wanted to move to a fixed blade, more for experimentation purposes. I actually found replaceable blade systems extremely lightweight and extremely convenient. But I wanted to try out some other stuff. Last year, I ran blades from Bruce Culberson, who's a local knife maker out of Vanderhoof, and Frontiersman Gear, Tanner Danish, who's another local bladesmith out of Prince George. And I strongly recommend, without a moment's hesitation, both those knife makers, but it's something I want to spend some more time on this year. So I don't have a whole lot of knife recommendations. I'm going to keep playing around with some stuff and I'll get back to you. Who is your favorite bodybuilder now and all time? With zero hesitation, I say Jay Cutler. Specifically, his physique in 2009 when he came back after losing in 2008 to the Blade, Dexter Jackson. That physique doesn't really fit today's standards, but it was the most awe-inspiring. That quad stomp photo of his is the most awe-inspiring physique I've ever seen. And yeah, I watched that whole battle between him and Ronnie for years and just loved the underdog, and being a white guy, Jay's a white guy, I felt a little more kinship. You look at Ronnie Coleman and it's like, how do you relate to that guy? He's a fucking alien. But Jay was like, I get it. He had to eat perfectly. He had trained perfectly. He had to have perfect discipline. Ronnie's putting barbecue sauce on chicken and just turning into like the freak of freaks. It's like, I don't have those genetics. I don't have Jay's genetics either, but yeah, man, Jay Cutler, hands down, specifically 2009. What's your one big goal or win this upcoming season? Said it before, I'll say it again. Mentorship. There are holes in my hunting game. I've got orienteering, I've got mountaineering, I've got survival, I've got a lot of mountain skills. There are holes in my specific hunting knowledge and hunting skills. And I need to spend more time with people who have killed more and have spent more time in the mountains than me. And I need to learn from them with humility. And so if I can come out of the end of 2023 and say, I know more about hunting because of the men that I spent time with in the mountains this year, then 2023 will be a win, period. For new hunters that are looking into backcountry overnight hunts, what is one thing, I'm going to assume that's one thing you wish you knew? Just don't give up, man. And listen, I knew that. So this is not like, You know what? I'm going to take that back. Here's the one thing I wish I knew and knew to my core, and I already talked about it in this podcast. There is no perfect gear. There is only perfect gear for a certain situation. And I spent so much time trying to buy the one thing that would be perfect for everything that I wasted time, I wasted money, all that kind of shit. Look at a hunt, figure out what the best shit is for that hunt, do your best to put your hands on it, and then just go. And recognize the longer you do this, the more stuff you're going to accumulate, the more options you're going to have, the more you're going to learn about what you like and what you don't like. Don't kill yourself up front. It's just gear. It's not what's going to break you. Your mind is what's going to break you. The wrong boots aren't going to send you home. A weak mind is what's going to send you home. So don't stress so much about the gear. What kind of glass do you run for most hunts, and what kind of boots are your favorite? This is the last question. As I mentioned before, I've Swaro NL Pures and Zeiss Harpy and 95 Spotter. And for boots, I run Schnee's Beartooths for moderately challenging terrain. And I run La Sportiva Nepal GTX for extremely challenging terrain. And I've run both those boots for multiple years in a row and couldn't be happier with either of them. In fact, I tried to buy a new pair of boots this year, ordered one, tried it on for 30 seconds and sent it back and realized this isn't worth it. I'm sticking with what I know. Listen, that was about as an epic Q&A podcast as you can possibly get. I hope I spent enough time on everybody's questions. I need you to understand how much I appreciate you. My life has changed as a result of this podcast and as a result of the people who are willing to give me their time and attention. And I respect you for that. And I will always treat you with that respect. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm not going to take sponsors and not tell that to you. I'm not going to waste your time, and I'm not going to waste your money. And I need you to understand how much that means to me. I take this very seriously. So when you guys ask me questions, I don't care how many there are, we're sitting here and we're answering them. So until next time, thanks for tuning in.